Now, the BBC's Moscow correspondent has left Russia today, expelled by the authorities there after being labelled a threat to national security. Sarah Rainsford, who first reported from Moscow for the BBC more than 20 years ago, just as Vladimir Putin was coming to power, has been told she can never return to the country. Moscow claims it's in response to the expulsion of a Russian journalist from the United Kingdom 2 years ago. But the move comes amid a severe crackdown on independent journalists and opposition activists within Russia. Here's Sarah's last report from Moscow.
This was the moment I discovered I was being expelled from Russia.
According to a specific law, I've been designated a threat to national security, and as such, I'm not allowed into the country.
Вам отказано во въезде в Российскую Федерацию бессрочно.
Pulled aside at passport control, I was told the FSB security service had banned me for life. I recorded the conversation.
Я знаю. Мы, соответственно, все информацию по вам уточним.
I was returning from Belarus, where I'd confronted Alexander Lukashenko on the mass repression and torture of peaceful protesters. His loyal supporters rounded on me in a coordinated attack.
Vladimir Putin's presenting this as just another working visit.
I've reported from Russia for 2 decades, the whole span of Vladimir Putin's presidency.
Russian people.
There have been highs, like the World Cup, but I've also charted the slow erosion of freedoms here, the crackdown on dissent. A year ago, the government put me on short-term visas.
Sarah Rainsford поедет домой.
Then I became the news. As state television announced I had to leave. After tense negotiations, I had been allowed to enter Russia.
They let me in, for now.
But only to pack. I was then told my visa wouldn't be renewed. Supposedly what happened to a Russian reporter in London, though that was 2 years ago.
When I was called in here to the Foreign Ministry, they kept insisting that my expulsion was nothing personal. They talked about it as a reciprocal move. But they refused to even engage with the fact that I've been labelled a national security threat. They said that was just a technical moment. But at a time when Russia is increasingly seeing enemies all around, it really feels like I've now been added to the list.
It's happening as the pressure on Russian journalists who don't toe the Kremlin line is intensifying. Dozh TV has just been added to a growing blacklist of media labelled foreign agents for getting funds from abroad.
The status of foreign agents means that we, Dozh, we are enemies of the state. The pretending of being democracy is over. It is very bad, and it could become much worse anytime.
Ready? So I'm leaving a country I first came to as the Soviet Union fell apart, when free speech, all freedoms, were new and precious. It feels like today's Russia is moving in reverse. Sarah Rainsford, BBC News, Moscow.
Well, let's talk about this more now with Luke Harding, who's a former Moscow correspondent and author of Mafia State, which tells his story of being expelled from Russia 10 years ago. He joins me now. Luke, good to have you with us. Does this bring back memories for you?
Yeah, I have to say, Ben, watching Sarah's kind of last report, it is horribly kind of familiar. The similar thing happened to kind of me at passport control. I was told the phrase was slightly different, but for you, Russia is closed. And I was kind of put in a deportation cell and sent back to London on the same flight I just arrived in. And there was a kind of minor diplomatic scandal then. And of course, the world moved on. But I think, as Sarah makes clear in her report, what we've seen in recent months from Vladimir Putin's government is a real kind of roll-up of independent media. I mean, her case is very sad, but also it's the Russian journalists who have been branded foreign agents, whose websites have been shut down, whose flats have been raided. And really, you get the sense that dissent in Russia has become more or less a crime, and that there seems a determined effort to really extinguish all meaningful sort of independent journalism in the country.
Yeah, I mean, is there any independent media really left in Russia?
Well, I mean, yes, there are some very, very fine and kind of brave correspondents, Russian correspondents who are still working there, but they're kind of increasingly vulnerable, and you just sort of fear the direction of travel that ultimately Russia, a bit like China, could be one of those countries where it becomes almost impossible to report in country, where you have foreign correspondents trying to do the job from London or from elsewhere, and where Russian journalists have to make some really tough choices about whether they kind of carry on and publish, or whether they go into exile, which is what we've also seen in recent months, with lots of journalists going to the Baltic states or elsewhere. You'll note that the press secretary of Alexei Navalny, the opposition leader who was poisoned last summer and who is in jail, fled yesterday. She left the country, and we're in a sort of situation where it's becoming actually, without the ideology, more and more similar to the Soviet Union.
And for international journalists like Sarah Rainsford there in Moscow, do you think, getting harder and harder to be there and ask really tough questions to the leadership, to the authorities?
I mean, I think that's right. I mean, it's always hard to know in these cases what it was that actually kind of prompted her expulsion, but clearly her reporting from Belarus made the regime in Moscow kind of unhappy. In my case, I think it was my investigation into the Polonium murder, you'll remember, Ben, in 2006, of Alexander Litvinenko, the Russian dissident, by two Kremlin assassins. And you're sort of tiptoeing around. And actually, if you do your job properly, you never know when you publish if something will happen or won't happen. And this sort of state of uncertainty, I think, is deliberate. But all I would say is that we have to be clear that there's a big distinction between Russia, which is a kind of great country with wonderful people that Sarah and I are both very fond of, and the government, which is lugubrious. It's made up of KGB people, and is kind of deeply paranoid, unfortunately, and conspiratorial.
And what is it like, just emotionally, as a reporter, to be expelled from a country, not to be able to work in a country that you love, that you find completely fascinating, and you've invested a lot in, and then suddenly one day you find you just can't be there anymore?
Well, yeah, I miss it, and I think Sarah will probably be missing it already, because, as I said, it's a kind of glorious place with great literature, theatre, books. And so on, and it's enormous too. I mean, there's a huge amount to see. I mean, I sort of traveled to Siberia, to Kamchatka, and I think the BBC has done some very kind of impressive and brave reporting in really kind of tricky circumstances. I mean, I have the kind of faint hope that one day I'll be allowed to go back. I mean, Sarah was saying in her report that she's been expelled indefinitely, but the one thing that Russian history teaches us is that the unpredictable can happen quite swiftly. We had at least 2 revolutions in the 20th century. For the moment, Putin looks kind of deeply entrenched, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe one day Sarah, myself, and others will be able to return, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon.
All right, Luke, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Let's hope you both can go back there one day. Luke Harding there, thank you.